All right, so we'll start with a bit of shameless self-promotion first. So firstly, I do a TESOL podcast. So if you're interested in kind of listening to more about kind of teaching things, you can find it at Masters of TESOL. Please notice it's Masters, not Master. So Masters of TESOL. Or you can find it on like podcasting apps, things like that. Whatever your podcasting app of choice, you can find it there. I'm also on Twitter occasionally. And basically everything I do today, I'm going to put it up on site if you want to download it yourself and use it or manipulate it as you see fit. I'll put it up across this weekend. All right, so hello, I'm Andrew Bailey. I actually work at Sumyoung, not on this campus, but on the other campus as a teacher trainer. But we're going to think about, firstly, I'll just give you a brief idea about pronunciation and what it is. Basically, we can separate pronunciation into two different sections. So firstly, we have segmental, and secondly, we have suprasegmental. So segmental is the basic vowels and consonants. Okay, so what would traditionally be thought of as the sounds of the language. So we call those the phonemes. However, what is often ignored in classrooms and in textbooks is often the more interesting part, which is suprasegmental. So we're thinking stress, intonation, the rhythm of the language, the pitch. Because I'm sure you're aware, different languages, the pitch of the language is different. Some languages are higher, some are lower. The amplitude, which is just a fancy word for the volume, and the tone. All right, so if we think of segmental as being like the basic sounds of the language, how we move our mouth to produce those sounds, then suprasegmental is what's layered on top of that, okay, which also has meaning and it also communicates things as well. Usually most textbooks and a lot of teachers just focus on this. However, a lot of communication happens in this section. It's just as important. In fact, in some cases, more important to get the suprasegmental things down. So today, we're going to do a mix of these things. Basically, I'll be handing out the materials and you'll be working to kind of experience what these things are like. So the first one, basically, here's my plan. We're going to do it. I've only got 45 minutes. We're going to do it kind of practicing it, and then if we're running out of time, I'll just run through as many as I can, just to kind of show you what they are. So the first one is minimal pairs bingo. So minimal pairs, if you don't know, is where you take two words and you change one of the phonemes. So for example, sheep and ship. Sheep, ship, sheep, ship. So most textbooks just have you say both. Occasionally a textbook will have it in a sentence. However, in this case, we're going to do it in a much more interesting way, which is the bingo. So what you would do is you would choose maybe two sounds that students find difficult to differentiate. So for example, or, e, or I, and e. And you would make them into a kind of bingo sheet, like this. So the idea is that you would arrange it so that you have to hear, you have to listen accurately in order to play bingo and to complete your sheets. And also that bingo is kind of a universal thing. People kind of know what it is. So it saves time. You don't really need to explain what it is. So what would happen is, so firstly, the teacher is the bingo caller. So in this case, I'll be the teacher. So I have my little bingo cards here. And if I give these to you, if you could take one each, please, and if you could kind of pass it back this way. Take one each, please. And start this way. And hopefully, I don't know. Yeah, if you've got any spares, let me know. Just pass them back and to the side. Okay, so everybody has their sheets? All right, so what do we do when we win? Bingo. Bingo, or if you're from England, you shout house. some reason, full house. All right, so first one, eyes down. Thank you. Sit. Turn. Four. Confirm. Leave. Torn. Eat. All right, okay, we have a winner. And then you would check it, because you'd also be marking the sheets. So you would check that it's definitely it. If it's not, then we just go back to the game and we keep going.
Yeah, so eat.
Yep.
And sit.
Yes.
And torn.
Torn, like.
Yeah, torn.
Mhm.
Yeah, and confirm.
Confirm.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, yeah, so there should have been other people who won as well, but you were the first one, all right, congratulations.
Yeah.
So you would check it?
Well, was it confirm or conform? You said confirm, right? That's an I.
Confirm is the last word. No, it was confirm.
Yeah, that's what I said.
No, I said confirm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was right, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, and it's worth checking, it really is.
No, I just
All right.
yeah, I didn't get it.
So,
I was kind of keeping track, but
and again, obviously accent plays into this as well. So I know what you're thinking, this is all fine, Andy, but isn't this a listening task? And you're absolutely right, because what you do next is you break the students into groups, and then one of the students becomes the bingo caller. So they would therefore be practicing it, and one student has to focus on the pronunciation. And you could do this weekly, where a different student is the bingo caller, or if you have time, you could do it all in one class. So yeah, you do exactly the same thing. You can manipulate the cards depending on which phonemes you're focusing on. So it doesn't have to be the same each time, or you can expand it. Each time you add a new phoneme, you can just expand it until you have like mega bingo at the end. It takes a whole hour to do it. All right, so that's the first one, just kind of making minimal pairs a little bit more interesting. Also, it's a good idea of taking a listening task and turning it into a pronunciation task as well. Yeah, so just break them out. All right, any questions so far? No? Doing all right? Yes?
do you think vowels are better learned through listening tasks rather than consonants? Or I've read somewhere I think that consonants were better learned through speaking tasks and vowel sounds were.
I mean, it's good to have a mix of them, and we'll actually come to vowels and consonants a bit later.
Okay.
So yeah, we'll come back to that. But it's good to have a mix because you're going to be hearing them as well as producing them. So it's kind of practicing multiple skills. Okay, so that was activity number 1. We took bingo, listening task, and then we change it into a speaking task. All right, next one is separating the students. Okay. And here we are. So which one is easier to teach then? Vowels or consonants? Consonants are easier because?
Well, depends what consonants you're teaching.
Just in general, consonants.
When you say vowels, there's no place to like anchor the tongue anywhere in your mouth, right?
Right, exactly. Consonants, things are touching. Your tongue is touching your teeth, or your lip is touching your teeth. So you can explain how to do it. Put your lips together, open your lips, purse your lips. So you can explain how to do it. You can actually describe it. With vowels, nothing is touching anything. So it's very difficult to explain the difference between it and E because nothing's touching. You can't just say, okay, put your tongue on your teeth or put your tongue between your teeth. So vowels are much more difficult to teach. And generally speaking, vowels have the most variety across different languages. Consonants tend to be at least similar. Vowels can often be radically different. Some languages have a lot, some don't have that many. So this is one important thing. So how do students feel the difference in the phoneme place of articulation? How can they actually feel where that sound is being produced? Well, I'm sure we've all used kind of these kind of things. So you'll find them in books, and the students just kind of see, all right, this is produced here, this is produced here. And that's fine. It can feel a little bit theoretical at times. So we can also use things like this, okay, where we actually use double words for each one. So green tea, silver pin. So going back to the bingo example, we have those two here, right? I and E, right at the front. And this is good because it uses exactly the same positioning. So we have our lips, we have your purple teeth down here, so lips. So it's all in the same position, but it's a lot more useful because we're actually producing the sound twice. So we still have the question, how do students feel the difference between the place of articulation? And the answer is volume. The problem is if you have students sitting very close to each other and they're kind of whispering to each other, you don't really feel where the air is hitting. You don't feel where it's being produced. But if you separate out your students and they have to speak up, they can actually start to feel the difference, okay? Feel the difference in that position. So you can do it like this. If this is the classroom, you can just have them stand at opposite ends. Okay? And then if you're doing a dialogue, for example, then they actually have to speak up. So we're going to try it now, just with a few people. You can ask everybody on the left of this line, if you could just stand up, please. You can stay at the desk, but if you could stand up, you can face this way. So everybody on the left side, please, if you can just stand up. All right, and if you could take one of these, please. Okay, just pass it down. Okay, and let's have everybody on this line, please. Just stand up. Okay, take one, pass it down. Okay, so if you're going to do this, here's a top tip. Don't have them reading. Yeah, you can join in. You're right. So the top tip is don't have them reading the same material at the same time, because what happens is it sounds like some kind of crazy stereo, and then nobody's listening because they're just aware that they're saying the same thing as their partner. So what we're going to do is stagger who's speaking. So let's say, so if we have number one, 2, 2, 3, number 4, number 1. Okay, so hands up number 1. Yeah, hands up number 2. Hands up number 3. All right, awesome. So if you're number 1, you're going to start on this line. Okay, so you're going to go green tea, silver pin, grey day, red dress, black cat, and then repeat it so you've both said both of them. If you're number 2, you're going to start here. You're going to go down this way, doing the same thing. And if you're number 3, you're going to start here, go down, then back to the front, and come on down here. Okay, so this is just separating you out so you're not repeating the same thing. And you're hearing your neighbor say exactly the same thing. It starts to drive you insane after a while. Okay, so I'll count down 3, 2, 1. So people on this side, you're going to start. Okay, so just nice and loud. Okay, ideally you would have them being apart. Okay.
Which one?
Yeah.
Once you get the black cat, like, you start over?
Yes, you do, yeah. So black cat, you go up to do everything, so make sure everyone has said everything. Okay, so you ready? So 3, 2, 1, speak.
Green tea. Sorokin. Gray day.
Louder than that, louder.
Black cat.
Green tea,
Silver pen.
gray day,
Red dress.
black cat,
Green tea.
Sorokin,
Gray day.
red dress.
Black cat.
Okay, I'll stop you there 1 second. Alright, so I want you to continue doing it, but this time really focus on, does it feel like it's here? Does it feel like it's a little bit lower? Does it feel like it's at the top? Does it feel like it's in the middle? So really focus this time. How does it feel? What's moving in your mouth? What's vibrating? Okay, continue please. So 3, 2, 1. Go.
Green tea.
Silver pin,
Gray day.
red dress.
Black cat.
green tea,
Silver pen,
gray day,
red dress,
black cat,
green tea,
silver pen,
gray day,
red dress,
black cat,
green tea,
silver pen,
gray day,
red dress.
Okay, so I'll stop you there. And this time you can choose it randomly, but the partner has to do the sound below. Okay, so if you say silver pin, the partner has to say grey day. If you say black cat, the partner has to say purple shirt. Okay, so really listen carefully, but again focusing, where is that sound being made? Okay, so 3, 2, 1, speak.
purple shirt, cover mustard,
Blue moon,
wooden book,
rose coat,
brown cow,
silver pen,
gray day,
black hat,
purple shirt,
green tea.
silver pin.
All right, I'll stop there. So thank you very much to those people. You can sit down, give them round. All right, nicely done. So one reason that we randomize it is to make sure that they're still listening. And also, you can do it with questions and answers. You can manipulate it so that the answers are using, or the questions and the answers are using whatever pronunciation feature you're looking at. So yeah, you can manipulate it for whatever your class is doing. But the idea is, once you start having volume, is that students can actually feel where the sounds are being made, because vowels are the most difficult. So yeah, going back to your question, you can use these kind of activities for actual production. Okay, any questions about that? We got it? All right. So, moving on, number 3. One of my personal favorites. This is changing the moods. Okay, so we've looked at the phoneme level, the segmental level. So we're going to start looking at the suprasegmental level. So this is a pretty typical dialogue. So this is from a Berlitz textbook, if anyone's familiar with Berlitz. Pretty standard, nothing too special. So let me just hand these out. Take one, please, and just pass it back into the left. Back, please. And pass it one back. Right, pretty standards. Yeah, any extras? All right. Really loading me up with stuff. Okay, so this is a pretty standard kind of dialogue. So what I want you to do first is, just with a person near you, maybe behind you, just read the dialogue. So one person is Irene and one person is Mike. Okay, so that's it. So just read the dialogue with the person near you. Irene?
Oh yeah, maybe it's all Irene is like all
Okay, so pretty standard, right? We've seen these kind of dialogues before. Not very exciting. Not very exciting. It's a very kind of A-B kind of response. So you can have the students run through it the first time. As you can see, this is actually a listening activity, so they could think of it from how does it sound on the CD. But then you can make it a little bit more interesting and give them a kind of backstory or a motivation. So for example, this time, Irene. So Mike is always behind schedule, and you always get the blame from your boss. But Mike, so you are really, really behind schedule, but don't let Irene know. So sound extra positive, you want to stop that conversation as soon as possible. Okay, so Irene, you're pretty annoyed, but Mike, you want to end that conversation quickly, but make sure she doesn't suspect anything. Okay, so with the same partner, please. So one person is Irene, one person is Mike.
How's the project going?
We're a little bit behind schedule.
Oh, I'm Irene.
I think so.
That's kind of fun. Yeah, I like that.
Well, I should be a bit more annoyed. How's the project going, Mike?
Mike. Hurry up, Mike.
Can we still meet next Thursday's deadline? That deadline is very important. Give me an update on Friday.
Okay, so it should be enough time. So it's always nice to kind of hear it. So can I ask you to kind of demonstrate, please? So who's Irene? Who's Mike? You're Irene, okay? So nice and loud and proud. Oh, no, you can sit down. That's fine.
How's the project going, Mike?
We're a little bit behind schedule.
How much?
A day or two.
Can we still meet next Thursday's deadline?
I think so.
That deadline is very important, Mike. Can you give me an update on Friday?
Sure can.
All right. So again, and it's always fun for the classes to actually hear people doing it. So you've done it once. This is the kind of backstory. You keep the same dialogue. Give them a different backstory. So this time, Irene, Mike is a new employee, and you want to make a good impression about what a nice boss you are. So you're going to be extra nice, extra sweet. Right? You want to be the nice boss. Okay, Mike, you're a new employee, but you have already decided to resign. You haven't officially resigned yet. It's a secret. But now you don't care if Irene likes you or not. All right, so just take a few moments, just look at the dialogue, think about how you are going to sound.
Okay.
All right, yeah, you can swap partners as well if you want.
Do you want to
Or
change
swap partners.
Or no?
Okay, so take a few minutes, please. So Irene, be sweet. Mike, you don't care.
We're a little bit behind schedule. Yeah, sure can. That's fun. I like this activity. It's interesting because at least students have a chance to think how they It's interesting how those things translate.
Okay, so everyone done? Yes? All right, great. So can I ask you two, please, you could kind of demonstrate. So who's Irene? Are you all right? Okay. So, action.
We're a little bit behind schedule. Day or two. Can we still meet next Thursday, John? Think so. Sure can, Erin.
All right, thank you very much. Very good. Nice. Okay. And so you can also kind of assign this as like a little video homework. If you have quite a creative group, just get them to upload it. Most classes these days have some kind of site, website, or just Facebook. Just get them to upload it, and it's really interesting because give each group a different backstory. So when you're watching it, you're getting different versions of it. There's a really great one that I used for ages. It was a restaurant discussion. It was a man and a woman having a discussion what restaurant to go to. You just give them backstories about you've just had an argument that has not been resolved yet. What's going to happen? Or one of them, you say, you've already decided to break up, but you're going to do it after the meal. So you give them all this, because what a lot of dialogues are missing is there's no kind of conflicts there at all. They're usually very bland conversations about restaurants, for example. So what you can do is actually inject some kind of emotional side to it. All right, it's as easy as this. And again, you can just manipulate it depending on what the relationship between the people are. All right, so that's an easy way. You can do it with pretty much any dialogue in a textbook. And it's really simple, doesn't take much planning at all. All right, any questions? Good? Sweet. All right, next one is stress placement and meaning. All right, so just a bit of background. English is a stress-timed language. Okay, so that means that the placement of the stress affects the meaning of the sentence. And again, most textbooks don't really cover this in much detail. So, for example, this sentence. So, I never said she stole the money. We can put the stress on any word in this sentence and change the meaning. Mm-hmm. So, for example, I never said she stole the money. 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 Every one of those variations has a different intention, a different meaning. And this makes a difference if you're having a conversation. What word is the person stressing? It kind of sends a different message to the person. So, what we can do, we can have student A, student B. So student A will get a sentence with one of the words in red, and that is the word they have to stress. Student B gets a list of options. What does it mean? Okay, so for example, someone else said she stole the money. You said she stole something else, not the money. Or you didn't say it directly, but you suggested it indirectly. Hint. And obviously you can reword this depending on the proficiency level. Okay, so for example, so if we're just with your partner, so let's say the person on the left, you're going to read the top bit, and the person on the right, you're going to guess which one it is. Okay, so person on the left, person on the right, and I guess you guys, person here, you can divide it however you like. So the first card is this one. So person on the left, please stress this word. Person on the right, guess the meaning. Okay. So say now. Right. Yeah.
How did it work out?
Okay, so person on the left, person on the right. So hands up for number 1. Hands up for number 2. Hands up for number 3. Okay, so that would be correct. Okay, so if you could switch over now. So the person guessing is now the person speaking. Okay, so now say with the stress on this word. I never
Yeah. It's interesting when God students use both.
Okay, so let's see. So first let's get a quick demonstration. So could you read the top line please with the stress? Oh nice, one more time, nice and loud and proud.
I never said she stole the money.
Alright, so the guessing people, is it number 1? Number 2? Or number 3? Unanimous for number 3. Alright, so let's see. You are correct. Alright, so final time, let's go back to the original person. So you're going to say this time with the stress on this word. Okay, so speak now.
Someone else said.
Okay, so let's get a quick demonstration then. So if you could please read it with the stress, please, nice and loud.
I never said she stole the money.
Ah, beautiful. One more time.
I never said she stole the money.
Okay, guesses. Hands up for number 1. Number 2. Number 3. Alright, let's see. It is number 1. Alright, and you can basically do this for as long as you need on each of the words. You can mix it up. You do the same thing with dialogues. You can take the previous dialogue, mark a stressed word on it, and get them to repeat the dialogue with a new stress and a new meaning. And therefore, the person has to respond appropriately with the correct kind of emotion. So, this is something which is really ignored in most textbooks. Most stress is usually about word stress, as in record, record, present, or presentation. What am I thinking about? Any examples you can think of?
Present and present.
That's right, thank you. Right, I knew there was something in there. Yeah, present. What was that? I forgot the word.
Present.
Present, right. Yeah, that's usually what the textbooks focus on. However, in this case, we're actually thinking meaning. How are you changing the meaning? So that is stress. Okay, so we're still thinking suprasegmental here. All right, any questions, problems? Yes?
Is there a name for that kind of sentence? Sentence that highlights stress, stress time language?
Stress time language. It's usually just referred to as prosody.
Prosody?
Yeah, where the, what do they call it, nucleus sound, the nucleus tone is basically the stressed word. But I don't think there's no word, no phrase I can think of at the moment, but yeah, we can just talk about stress time. Yeah. All right. So finally, 2 truths and a lie. All right, so this is a kind of classic, quite often it's an icebreaker. And yeah, students, you know, they get used to it, but often the lies are not very good. The lies are like, you know, my name is John, I am a systems engineer, I live on the moon. Right? Well, this game got a little bit easier. So, first thing about this is make sure to remind them that it should be a believable lie. All right. But this time we're going to do it by adding tag questions and thinking about how the intonation changes depending on if you're certain that something, or fairly certain that something is true, or less certain that something is true. Okay, so we have basically a statement but with a descending intonation if you're pretty sure. So, oh, you're a doctor, aren't you? You're pretty sure that that's true, but you're a doctor, aren't you? You're kind of checking that information. So on the page it looks identical, but in reality the intonation shows how certain the person is. So what we can do is have students write a series of biographical info. I have a little kind of sheet here. Now on the sheet there are some hints. So something about your childhood, something about your job, something about your homes, if you're very successful. Something about your English language experience. Okay. So this is if you have kind of lower level students, you can kind of scaffold them a little bit. into what kind of answers. Then the students will switch papers, and they will read the information, change it into a tag question sentence, but with the sentence they think might be a lie, they have to change the intonation to a rising intonation. So you can also give them examples of the tag questions they could use. All right, so the first thing, let us try. I'm going to hand out the sheet. If you could take one each, please, and it's back. All right, just take a couple of minutes, just write down some basic information. But remember, one of them must be a believable lie. Okay, so don't say, I have 6 arms, or I'm Janet Jackson or something. Something like that. Can you pass that, please? Okay, so just silently, just take a few minutes, write some basic information with one believable lie. Another 30 seconds or so, just to complete that. Because you're going to swap papers in a minute. Okay, so everybody got at least 2 with one lie in it, hopefully. All right, so what I'd like you to do is, with your partners, if you could swap the papers. And now you get to see how terrible some people's handwriting is.
Yeah, that's true.
So what you're going to do is you're going to change the statement into a tag question. But if you believe it, you're going to go down. It's like, oh, you were born in Singapore, weren't you? The other student confirms, yes, I was, no, I wasn't. If you think it might be the lie, you're going to raise the intonation. So you were born in Singapore, weren't you? And the student can confirm, yes, I was, no, I wasn't. Okay, so take a moment first just to read the examples.
You've always been born, haven't you?
Okay, and when you've decided, if you can switch them, read them, take turns, and change your intonation, please. Okay, so I'll give you 3 minutes.
You've always been born.
Should we just go like that? Yeah, okay, so,
All right.
so I have to tell you. Okay, I guess, I guess, yeah. Alright, so, you enjoy roller coasters? Or should I just keep going? Oh, okay. You don't have a TV, do you? I was gonna say, what I was gonna say is, you you shared it with Reese and Stanley. I want to try. Okay. Yes. I will use that much. Like Riverside, Southern California. Yeah, that's a cool activity. Like students could say like try to do results that they think are not the lie first. But then yeah, I guess once they get it, they can still practice asking the questions in the way that they know they should ask.
Okay, you can stop there, please. Stop there. So, and again, you would get some kind of feedback from students. If I could ask, could you read the sentence you thought was the lie, please? Okay, with the intonation. Or you.
You were born in Busan. Weren't you?
No, actually, I was born in Seoul.
Alright, there you go. Alright, round of applause, thank you. And again, it's a good example. Often we can start with exaggeration and just naturally over time it will kind of settle down. So let's try one more, please. Could you read what you thought was the lie, please? Yeah, with the intonation.
Your job isn't demanding, is it?
Alright, it is. Alright. Nice. So, and again, we can adjust this depending on the levels. If you're dealing with higher proficiency, you can have more facts with no limit on the lies. They could all be lies, they could be two, they could all be true. It's up to you. Lower levels, you could, again, scaffold it with getting them to actually draw on the intonation. So when they're reading it, they can just follow the intonation there. It takes a little bit of cognitive load off. And again, thinking about how intonation in English affects the meaning of what we're saying. So you can also do things with WH questions, because a lot of students think that all English questions the intonation goes up, but WH questions it goes down. It's only yes/no questions that go up. So yeah, you can have them draw it on and do all kinds of things like that. So yeah, basically I'm going to put all this stuff up on the site, so masters with an S of TESOL. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm an occasional tweeter. But yeah, that's the end for today. So thank you. You were very helpful.
Absolutely.